Gotta catch 'em all. It's a slogan that has surrounded the Pokemon franchise for almost 30 years. But how many people have actually caught them all? Good evening, folks. I'm Professor Cilantro, and today I'm going to tell you the story of how I obtained every single Pokemon in existence in under 151 hours. Before we get into the video today, hit that like button for me because I have worked tirelessly to make this video possible. Trying to revive my career on YouTube with doing something that nobody's done before. This is a challenge I've always wanted to do, and I finally decided to embark on the journey to see how long it would take me. And let me tell you something. It was far from easy. Let me take you back to the beginning of August 2024 when I originally started this challenge. Here was me, determined, excited, all gung-ho, and then here was me towards the end of the challenge. Today will be the actual last day of the challenge because I really thought tonight would be the night. Oh boy, was I wrong. Chat, we might not finish this challenge in time. We might not. As you can see, the range of emotions I had during this was, well, probably as you'd expect from taking on a challenge of this caliber. But let me assure you, this challenge was not for the faint of heart. In fact, I would argue that if you value your sanity, I would not suggest trying this at all. Before I take you through my explanation of how I actually did this, there are a couple of self-imposed rules I had in place in order to successfully complete this challenge. First and foremost, all Pokemon must be obtained within 151 hours. I am not allowed to trade Pokemon with anybody at all, excluding trade evolutions because obviously I'm gonna need to do that at some point in this challenge. All Pokemon must be legitimately obtained with my OT on them, excluding any Pokemon that was obtained through an NPC trade. Obtaining alternate forms is not required to complete the dex, so that means with anything like Alchemy, Unknown, or anything of this sort, I do not need to obtain their alternate forms in order to complete this. But regional forms such as Alolan forms, Hisui forms, etc., we are going to count those for this. I must not spend any real money to buy new games, cheating devices, or anything of the sort that would allow me to get these Pokemon easier. It's only what I have already available that I am allowed to use. So the goal here, especially considering the state of the economy, I'm not allowed to buy any new Pokemon games at all. So this means if there is a version exclusive that is quite literally only obtainable through one version, I'm not allowed to spend money on it. And trust me, this rule is going to become very important later on. I cannot use Pokemon Go at all unless it's to obtain Meltan and Melmetal. Those are the only two Pokemon that I can use Pokemon Go to obtain. If a Pokemon is no longer obtainable due to a timed event or mystery gift, I will not count that towards this challenge. I'm going to tell you real quickly what those Pokemon are. Celebi, Diancie, Hoopa, Volcanion, Marshadow, Zeraora, Zarude, Walking Wake, and Iron Leaves. Bear in mind that all but one of these Pokemon are currently obtainable. That one Pokemon I'm talking about is Celebi. If you own a copy of Pokemon Crystal on the Virtual Console, you can obtain a legitimate Celebi in the post-game. Unfortunately, I don't have access to Crystal on the Virtual Console as the Nintendo eShop servers have currently shut down. So that's out of the question. So taking away the 9 Pokemon that we are deeming unobtainable, that brings our grand total to 1,071 Pokemon that I need to catch for this challenge. What a better way to start off the challenge than with the original 151 themselves. I began this challenge with Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. I chose Let's Go because of 2 reasons. Number 1, it made obtaining certain Pokemon like Chansey, Kangaskhan, Tauros, and multiple other Pokemon a whole lot easier rather than obtaining them in the original games using like the Safari Zone or something. Additionally, with this game, the entire gimmick is quite literally to catch them all. So it just kind of fell fitting. Don't get me wrong, there were times when this part got very challenging, waiting for rare spawns to show up, or even just based on the fact that this would be the first of many games that required me to play through the story in its entirety. in order to make my life easier with catching certain Pokemon. Now sure, this could have easily been countered if I went into this challenge with even a smidge of planning, but of course, if you know me, I don't plan things well at all, so that should tell you everything you need to know. As you can see, going through Let's Go Eevee was yielding the expected results that I presumed it would, obtaining virtually every single Kanto Pokemon that I needed, minus a small handful that I would get later on in different games. Now, dealing with finding Dragonite was a nightmare. Even just finding a Dratini and a Dragonair were beyond frustrating, I'm just gonna be honest with you. But I was stubborn, and again, went into this with zero planning at all. So you gotta give me credit for that. I think I still did a pretty good job. I probably wasted a significant amount of time by trying to actually hunt it down in this game, rather than just breeding a Dratini at a certain time and leveling it up and evolving in Scarlet and Violet later on. But I digress, because again, I don't have a functioning brain. But I was on a mission, and a mission of slowly losing my sanity at that. With that all said and done, I had finally completed basically all of the Kanto Pokemon, minus a few. Going a bit out of order here, I decided the next game I would be moving on to was going to be Pokemon Sword and Shield. Oh, the cursed gen. The gen where everything went wrong in my life after this came out. You know, I haven't played Gen 8 since 2019. Like, okay, I mean, technically, I played the DLC in, like, 2022. But we're going to have to play through it again. Why do I already have a game started? That's a great question. Why do I already have a game started? Huh. Okay. I mean, this isn't a bad thing, actually, if I do already have it started. But what's my OT on this, though? Oh, the OT is Spaceson, so it does work. When was this adventure started? Low Live Exploring Save Files? This was in 2019. Oh my god, this was in 2019, chat. Wow. Okay. I guess that'll work. We already had something going, so I guess that kind of works out in my favor. So I could skip the intro. So I have a few things caught here. We'll add that up and get it sorted in a minute. Now let's do something real quickly here. So we have Grookey, Squovet, Nickit, and Lotad. So let's add those all to the list. All right, well, you guys know what we're doing. We're catching Pokemon. That's what we're doing tonight. Why were you stalking me last Tuesday and then come help stretch me? Here's the f are you on about? All right, so Yamper was caught. So we're going to be at 132 then. 132 total. Excellent. Let's stretch out this shirt a little bit. Feels like this is from my smaller era. I think I just dug this out of the closet today. Get a little recline going. So the reason I even started playing Sword and Shield at this point in the challenge was because there is a wide variety of Pokemon available from all different generations in this game. This was an attempt to start whittling down the amount of games I was going to ultimately need to play for this challenge, due to the fact there was going to be some Pokemon only available in the DLC for Sword and Shield. I figured it was the best way to get started on it earlier rather than later. But now comes the time for me to introduce you to a very important rule in this challenge, one that I told you we would bring up again later. And again, I am Mr. Streamer Man, and I get to make the rules. I still don't have the ability to get a Koraidon. Which, just throwing it out there, if somebody, not saying you have to, but if somebody felt like playing through Copy Scarlet with my OT on it, and then trading me the Koraidon and Zacian, I wouldn't say no. We're gonna call this one
the Economical Climate Clause.
Okay, so let's talk about the Economical Climate Clause. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for a little presentation. First of all, as you can see right here, this is what tells you I don't want to spend any money. You see that chart? Yeah, it's not looking too pretty, is it? Now, if you take a look over here, you're gonna see that this is also, well, to be honest with you, I don't really know what's here, but it should explain to you very clearly the whole reason we're doing this is because I don't want to spend money. Would you want to spend the money on another game just to catch one Pokemon? Sure, you could argue that it might, be a little bit cheating because you technically do need to play through the game, which would add more time to the timer. But as you'll see right here, I don't give a shit. Yeah, if it could be my OT, I feel like at the very least that's like, we're kind of not cheating. This is like the justification of how people decide to cheat. But I'm just saying, economical climate clause in effect on that one. I mean, call me loophole Larry if you want to, but you gotta do what you gotta do with this one, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna continue on catching more and more Pokemon here, and throughout the majority of the rest of this stream, I was just locked in trying to catch literally every single Pokemon that I could get my hands on. Now, later on, you're gonna see that, well, there was a lot of catching I had to do. And a lot of screens you're gonna have to watch. You'll see exactly what I mean in just a moment. Alright, economical climate clause in effect. Alright, Zacian acquired. Instead of like TikTok brain rot, where you just have like 9 different games, Subway Surfers, maybe an episode of Family Guy, God knows what else on screen, how about we just watch 6 screens of Pokemon? For the next several streams I did, I had spent that time expanding my collection massively, catching Pokemon from all different regions with the primary focus on a lot of Gen 8 Pokemon. I was trying to limit the amount of side work I would need to do later on when it came to playing these games, because obviously I'm going to need to revisit some of these. Especially, as you'll see in a while, there was a few games that I basically had to play through in their entirety for only one Pokemon. Now, at some point in time, I went on Pokemon Go and I got Meltan, and I forgot to include this footage in there somewhere, but here's a screen recording of that. You were transferred a Pokemon, transfer Pokemon from Pokemon Go for the first time as a reward. You'll receive a special Melmetal that's capable of Giant. Okay, alright, well, I just got that. Just so we're clear, you can see that there. I have now obtained Melmetal. I have that screen recorded, so we can at least put that in the video. So now we can put that as 294. As time went on, with many resets to get the right weather in the wild area, many checks to the tracker to make sure that I was obtaining the Pokemon I needed to, and most definitely making a few too many curries, but we won't worry about that. I was beginning to lose my mind a little bit, I'm not gonna lie to you. But what made me very happy was seeing that I was inching closer and closer to my ultimate goal. But don't worry, that definitely wouldn't be the last time I would be visiting this game. In fact, you'll see just how disorganized I ended up being throughout this challenge. Despite all the frustration and confusion, I had managed to grow my collection up to 350 Pokemon obtained in just 36 hours and 20 minutes. With many Pokemon to still obtain in Pokemon Shield, I would definitely be coming back again later on. But for now, it was time to pay a visit to a much older region. There was one Pokemon in specific that I could only obtain from this game. Legends Arceus. Arguably the greatest Pokemon game that's come out since Black and White. And as I mentioned before, this is a game that we have no choice but to play through the entirety of, since this was the last time Arceus was available to catch, other than all the way back in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where there was an event to be able to catch Arceus, and obviously the BDSP event as well. Thankfully, this way I'd only have to play BDSP for a little bit, until later on you'll see more about that. Thankfully, given the option to play through this amazing game again, I still needed to bear in mind that time is of the essence. The frustrating part is that from start to finish, this game would take upwards of 15 hours to complete the story. Sure, that time definitely could have been shrunk significantly if I didn't focus on catching any Pokemon during my playthrough at all. But since this game not only has all Gen 4 Pokemon in it, plus some extras available from other gens, it just only made the most sense to tackle Legends Arceus. Also, now that I'm saying this, I forgot something very important. There's another Pokemon that can only be obtained in this game specifically, which further proves my point as to how tedious this challenge is. And that Pokemon is Enamorus. Which, by the way, this Pokemon, can I say, trying to catch this thing is nothing short of a nightmare. Or at least, that was my experience. But for now, let's enjoy a proper Gen 4 experience. Now, one thing I should mention is that around this point in the challenge, I was indulging in a couple of drinks. And I may have forgotten to mark down a couple of Pokemon along the way. I mean, listen, there's over 1,000 of them. It was bound to happen, whether I was indulging in some fun or not. At times, I definitely forgot to mark down Pokemon in the tracker. But don't worry, because later on, we caught up with everything. And also, somehow the pinnacle of this playthrough, Arceus, I forgot to somehow mark this down on the tracker. Can you believe that? Because I can, and I'm going to be honest with you, I was at this point, I was really starting to lose my sanity, but neither here nor there. But yeah, I forgot to mark them down, but don't worry, later on, when I go through my Pokemon home and everything in my collection, I catch up on this. So just, if you see the number on screen being a little inaccurate sometimes, just bear with me. And it also goes without saying, this was definitely a reoccurring theme. So if you happen to notice some footage of Pokemon missing, don't blame me too hard. I'm only human. There's, like I said, over 1,000 Pokemon. Cut me a little bit of slack on the fact that sometimes I might have forgot to mark Pokemon down, especially when I was enthralled in what was going on in my chat. And to be fair, when I'm editing through this, I'm just scrubbing through the footage to see when the number ticks up. So sometimes it might have been like 15 minutes later. I might have just forgot. But I guarantee you all the VODs will be available in the description. So if you really want to check the legitimacy of anything, you're more than welcome to. Just be aware I might have forgotten to mark down some Pokemon sometimes. That said, at this point, you can see that I'm definitely feeling it with this challenge and having my doubts, but I'm just doing my best to remain positive anyways. Editor's note, I took a quick gander at the Living Dex, and I found out that I was off count. Somehow I'm at 419, not 416. So that's gonna kind of suck for when it comes down to editing. I might have missed a few, but whatever, sue me, I'm human, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, either way, I'm gonna try my very best to make sure that doesn't happen again. After many long nights of grinding out every single Pokemon in the entirety of this game, even having to catch Pokemon I had already obtained, mind you, it was finally time to obtain the god of all Pokemon. 30 hours for one single Pokemon. No, okay. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Oh, man. We're gonna be here for a minute. Like, continue battle. Wait, what the fuck is this? You can carry over some of the progress you made on depleting the Pokemon's frenzy gauge. Wait, what?
You telling me you didn't know about continue?
No. Don't even start with me right now. It's 5 in the goddamn morning. Don't even start with me right now, bro. Don't even go there right now, dude. Good fucking riddance. Oh my god. Let him know you were here, Chad. Let him know you were here, bro. No more. No more of this goddamn game, dude. Oh my god. All caps. Chad. Let it be known, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we just grinded for the last 30 hours for. 30 hours. You would think since catching Arceus was essentially the highlight of me playing this entire game, I would be more mindful to mark it down as caught, right? No. Like I said, I forgot a little bit, okay? But just bear with me. Eventually, I caught up with the counter. But that being said, Arceus was obtained, and now finally, it was time to move on to the next chapter of this challenge. Welcome to the peak of Pokemon remakes. I knew it would eventually be necessary for me to play ORAS. And once again, I needed to play through an entire game just for one Pokemon. Now, Deoxys being legendary, or somewhat mythical, I don't really know what you would consider it. This Pokemon was only previously available through an in-game event in Generation 3. Now, since one of my rules was I'm not allowed to use cheating devices in order to obtain old events, I had no choice but to obtain it by playing through the entire Pokemon ORAS story, and getting to the Delta episode and finally catching it. Luckily for me, there were a handful of Pokemon that I obtained during this playthrough that in some cases would have proved to be a rather frustrating challenge to obtain otherwise. It's probably good that I got them in ORAS now rather than later. All in though, I pretty much never caught any Pokemon throughout my ORAS playthrough just to try and speedrun it to the end as fast as humanly possible. After obtaining only about like 10 Pokemon through my ORAS playthrough, prior to beating the Elite Four, I was still making solid progress. And even though it felt like I wasn't at the same time, I knew that at the end of the day, this was going to be important to do, because if I did it at the end, I might have ran out of time. We get to go get Deoxys. Let's go. W's in the building, bro. Let's go. This team goes so hard, bro. Chat, this is what we have just worked the last like 11 hours of our lives to accomplish, is to come here to get Deoxys. Honestly, not as long as I thought it was going to take. We came all this way to catch Deoxys. Playing through this whole game was just to get this. And now, that is another journey wrapped up. But we are still going to go catch other stuff in this game, though. I'm not done with this game yet. Oh, I never marked off Swampert. Okay, well, let it be known now, for editor's purposes, I should have marked off Swampert. Okay, so let it be known that I'm an idiot and forgot to mark off Shroomish, so that is 521. $527. No, wait, I'm at 528 now. I don't know what I missed, but I'm at 528. After catching a few more Pokemon along the way, I finally completed the Delta episode and obtained Deoxys. I then decided to go on a little bit of a catching spree, some of which it may not have been wise in terms of time efficiency, simply because I didn't realize how much easier it would have been to obtain some of these Pokemon down the line in different games. But yeah, I may have wasted a little bit of time in Oras catching more Pokemon than I pretty much needed to at that time. At this point, I decided to take a small detour and get some very important Pokemon out of the way. Okay, now for the polar opposite of Pokemon remakes, might be the worst, the absolute bottom of the barrel, if you will. Listen, I'm not even gonna get into that tangent right now, but Pokemon BDSP. I already knew that going into this, I would have to at least play through the first hour or so of this game in order to obtain 2 mythical Pokemon. You see, in BDSP, there are NPCs in Floroma Town who will gift you these mythical Pokemon, both Jirachi and Mew. They will only gift you these Pokemon if you have save data in Sword and Shield and Let's Go. Thankfully, it didn't take me too long to be able to obtain these 2 mythical Pokemon and be able to move on from there. Now, back to Oras. Again, for some reason, I decided it would be a smarter idea to do a large catching spree in this game, which it was for some Pokemon rather than others, but besides the point, the only thing that I sort of regret doing in this game was going after the Regis, because I didn't realize you could catch them later on again in Sword and Shield as part of the Regieleki and Regidrago quest. But besides the point, I did them in here anyways, and I wasted a bit of time. It is what it is. Although, it was definitely more nostalgic to catch them this way. But I would still have to catch the OG 3 Regis in Sword and Shield later on anyways. But again, since I didn't realize that at the time, I just figured it would be, you know, a little bit more nostalgic. A little bit more of a throwback. But nevertheless, with 582 Pokemon under my belt, my journey through Hoenn was complete. Generation 9, the laggiest of them all. The great thing about Scarlet and Violet is the simple fact that almost every single Pokemon I needed at this point was going to be available to catch in this game. Right out of the gate, I was catching basically everything that I came across, as most of the encounters I had were Generation 9 Pokemon that I had not seen yet. At this point, it was all about speed, persistence, and a certain level of optimization. Being just under 80 hours into the challenge, with still over 400 Pokemon to obtain, it was time to make moves if I wanted to do everything on time. After spending several days grinding through this game to beat the main story, catching as many Pokemon as I could along the way, I had a long road ahead of me still. Continuing to go on a catching spree, I tried to whittle down the total Pokemon remaining as much as I could. I figured that I pretty much played every game that I was more or less going to need to play at this point to catch everything I needed. It was just a matter of going back and doing some catch-up work at this point. Plus, I still needed to play the DLC for Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield, which by doing so was going to yield the vast majority of Pokemon I still had remaining on the counter Unfortunately, playing through the Scarlet and Violet DLC was only necessary to get a handful of Pokemon, plus maybe a few hidden other ones, you know? Now, taking on the DLC was just as tedious as the previous tasks. Realistically, both the Teal Mask and the Treasure Barrier Zero are DLCs that don't take super long to play through, especially if you just skip the dialogue and button mash the entire way. Thankfully, one other great thing about the DLCs is that once you get to the Blueberry Academy, I would unlock Blueberry quests. These would not only prove to be very important later on, as it would not only allow me to unlock certain legendaries that I still needed, but also by doing Union Circles, it would aid me massively when it came to tracking down certain Pokemon as fast as possible. I intentionally left all Pokemon like the starters until I got to the Blueberry Academy. Doing this would prove to be very important, as it would not only allow me to unlock some legendaries that I still needed, as well as many others. I may not have been able to trade with other players to complete the dex, but there was no rule against playing in Union Circles. But don't worry, we'll come back to this later. Eventually, with just under 115 hours on the clock, I obtained the final Gen 9 Pokemon I needed, Pecharunt. This now left us with around 200 Pokemon left to obtain, which definitely ended up being less after I realized how stupid I was and I completely miscalculated everything along the way, because again, I went into this with no planning, but you know, that's just a classic from your boy Jason Spaceson. But nevertheless, I was still hopeful. Now, after this was complete, it was time for us to return to Pokemon Sword and Shield to begin our adventure through the DLC, which was definitely going to feel like the most grindy part of this challenge yet at this point. But here we go. Starting off with the Sword and Shield DLC, I began with the Crown Tundra, simply to knock out what would prove to be one of the most annoying parts of this challenge, obtaining legendaries. Now, I needed to use a method that was going to make this simple, quick, and effective, and that was Dynamax Adventures. The great thing about Dynamax Adventures was the fact that I could enroll the help of people in my community to help me make this process as smooth as possible. Number 1, avoiding the troubling challenge that would be taking on these raids with bots, which if you've ever done DAs before, you know how frustrating it can be to have NPCs on your team and just making terrible decisions. So thankfully, I had my chat to help me with this. And number 2, having my chat to help me with this also meant that I could have them look for specific tunnels that had the Pokemon I needed in them. And trust me, this was working like a well-oiled machine. And I have to give a huge shout out to my entire chat for helping me out with this segment of the challenge, as I really think without them, this would have been exponentially harder. Knocking out all the Ultra Beasts, as well as the outstanding version exclusive legendaries I still needed, we got basically everything we needed from Dynamax Adventures within only about 7 hours total, which is pretty damn good, especially considering the fact that each of these runs took about 15 minutes. I was blessed to have this kind of help with this challenge. So big shout out to my community for that one. From this point, it was merely a matter of continuing the monotonous collectathon that I was already going through. Thankfully, most of the remaining Pokemon that I needed were going to be able to be obtained through Scarlet and Violet or Sword and Shield, and one more game that you would see me play through. Now, speaking of how helpful and amazing my community is, I just want to include this clip to take a look at real quick. Also, don't question the maid outfit, man. I don't want to explain it. I lost a bet. Just go with it. Check the Discord. Check the pinned messages in the general chat if you want to understand. It's just been a week, so thank you. Genuinely thank you. Let's make some good content this week, chat. Cilantro, chat. Dude, that's so much money, man. Holy dude. Bro, I can't even breathe right now. Like, that's actually so much money, dude. Bro, thank you. Holy dude. After catching a bunch of the Pokemon I needed, including all legendaries and regional variants, I finally got to the last Pokemon I would need for now, being Keldeo. I genuinely had no idea Keldeo was even in the DLC for this game until my chat had made me aware of that fact earlier on in the challenge. After obtaining Keldeo, we were at 911 Pokemon caught with under 127 hours on the clock. At this point, we only had approximately 24 hours left to complete the challenge. So, bearing that in mind, it was all about focus, speed, momentum, and optimization to get this done correctly. But now, it's time to head on to the next chapter of this challenge. And guess what? Once again, we were going to play through a game that we really only needed to do for one single Pokemon. Aren't you just loving where this is going? Because holy shit, I was losing my mind with this. Okay, maybe it was for more than one single Pokemon, but like, seriously, this was a pain in the ass. Generation 7. Being the generation that got a lot of mixed reviews, I have to admit, I think I played through Ultra Sun and Moon more times than I can count for any other generation of Pokemon games, which is wild to me. But now, it was time to add one more playthrough to that list. The main reason I needed to play through these games was for a select handful of Alolan Pokemon that I needed, including regional variants, of course, and regular Alolan Pokemon, but also because I had specifically needed to play the Ultra version for one big reason. And that was Poipole. You see, Poipole is an Ultra Beast, and that was only obtainable in Generation 7 in the Ultra versions. In order to obtain Poipole, you must reach a place called Ultra Megapolis, where there was a research station set to explore and understand the history of these Ultra Beasts, yada yada. I don't have to explain it, right? But you see, the only way to get a secondary version of this without starting another Sword and Shield save file and doing the DLC again was through this method, which, let me just say, for the game that has the most cutscenes and dialogue out of any game in the series, oh boy, did I love doing that. After reaching Ultra Megapolis, an NPC will give you a Poipole that you can only get once. One per save file. And since it's unbreedable, this presented the original problem in the first place. Back at the Crown Tundra, after obtaining all the Ultra Beasts and Dynamax adventures, you were able to get a Poipole for free from this NPC. Now you would think, okay, so why do you have to play through this game if you could get it for free? Well, I'll let you know something. This evolves. Of course it evolves. Why would it not? An Ultra Beast being pretty much considered a legendary, it's just basically like, hey, you know what? Hey, have an extra fun challenge. You totally won't want to lose your mind for this one. Gen 7's great, but dear God, not for like my 9th playthrough, man. I'm losing my mind at this point. But after collecting Poipole, we just have a minute amount of Pokemon left to go. So at this point of the challenge, I'm 137 hours deep into it, with very little time left to obtain everything I still needed. So I had to go into overdrive to obtain the last remaining Pokemon. So a lot of what was left at this point was Pokemon that needed to be evolved, or Pokemon that needed to be breeded, and a couple of stragglers that were left from the original playthroughs of some of these earlier games I played in this challenge. But bearing in mind, I still needed full concentration and persistence to be able to obtain the rest of the Pokemon I needed at this point. I realized there was still going to be a handful of Pokemon that were going to be obnoxious to obtain, and some of which were going to be Pokemon I only needed to play the first hour or two of a certain game in order to obtain. Can't you tell I'm loving this? But besides that being the cherry on top of it all, let's take these for example. The Elemental Monkeys. Did you know that prior to the Switch, these Pokemon were only obtainable in 2 titles before the Switch games launched? Take that in. Take in how I literally had to go on a scavenger hunt for these because they were only available in either black and white or X and Y. And don't worry, these wouldn't be the only Pokemon that would have that same fate to them. Thankfully, they were obtainable in X and Y. The Elemental Monkeys, I could catch all of them in Santaloon Forest, which is really within the first like 20 minutes of the game, so it made this relatively easy, and thankfully I could import them later on to Sun and Moon, breed them, and be able to get extra copies of them and evolve them to their evolutions. But nonetheless, was still a pain in the ass to deal with, but we did it though. Before I forget to include it, we got some footage here of me getting Magearna, which is interesting that this even still works. You could just scan a QR code and bam, there we go, Magearna's in your game, which is wild that still from 2016 this QR code works. From this point, all you have to do is go into the mart here in Howoli City, and then you go grab it from the guy, and bada bing, bada boom, you got Magearna. Following this, we got a couple of economical climate clause instances here. I wanted to get myself the other Reggie that I was missing, as well as the version exclusives like Gouging Fire and Raging Bolt. I caught a Sinnoh, which you could barely even see, and then also had to get Porygon 2 because I was missing that from well earlier on in the challenge. And at this point, we also caught Iron Boulder. Now, following this, I actually learned that you could get the Paldean starters in Pokemon Home as gifts, which is very good because it saved me a lot of time having to start new save files to obtain the Paldean starters, as those were the only other way you could get them. I bred them all and evolved them respectively, and from there, that was another 9 Pokemon added to the Dex. Following that, I also grabbed this Duraludon because I never ended up getting one earlier on, and then something kind of interesting happened. Is that shiny? That's shiny, bro. No f***ing way. Yo, no way. Yo, what the f***? Yo. All right. Nice, dude. Random shiny giraffe rig. We take those. So now this gets kind of interesting because we take it back to the Blueberry Academy quests. In the Blueberry Academy, you can do these Blueberry quests, and every so often after you do X amount, you can talk to Snacksworth, who will then give you a treat corresponding to a certain legendary Pokemon. Well, considering there's about like 30 some odd legendaries, I was only after 2 in specific, one of those being Spectrier and the other one being Kubfu. Now let's just say you need some good RNG with this one. Luckily, once again, my luck proved to be working efficiently. Let me just see what he has for me. Hopefully maybe I get lucky and he just gives me what I need. Does he give me at random? There's no way to manipulate it? Complete 10 solo quests. No way! No way! No way, bro! What? Nah, that's crazy! That's crazy! No way, dude. No. Someone clip that. Someone clip that, bro. And then I got even more lucky. Only a couple of treats later, I ended up getting the Kubfu one as well. Yes! Let's go, baby! W's! So now you just have to go to these select locations to catch both of them, and then also I went to evolve my Kubfu to an Urshifu because we had the other one from the Isle Armor, and then I had to get this Bruxish as well that I forgot to grab earlier. Now, even though I already showed this footage earlier as well, you can see here I went to X and Y to catch the 3 elemental monkeys. I brought them over to Ultra Sun and Moon, bred a copy of each of them, and then evolved each of them with their respective stones. Now, after this section of the stream, I then decided it would be wise for me to begin sorting out every Pokemon I caught, just to make sure that my count was up to par and that I wasn't missing anything. I started putting every Pokemon I had into home and transferring them all into one place. This is where I began to recalculate the amount of Pokemon I had actually caught at this point. As I mentioned earlier on, there were definitely times where I had obtained a Pokemon and then kind of forgot to add it to the counter, and that's just my own fault because I'm a special little guy. The tracker on screen was not always accurate. After spending several hours of organizing Pokemon I had caught so far, I had now realized that my true count was 987 Pokemon within 144 hours, which is cutting it close, man. It's cutting it real close. This meant that I would still have under 100 Pokemon to go and only 7 hours to catch them all. Pokemon Black and White. Now, being tasked with playing my favorite generation of all time, I was admittedly thankful, but also a bit sad that I didn't have to go all the way through the game. In fact, what I needed to do was only going to require me to play to Castelia City. It was time for me to acquire some mythical Pokemon that would only be available through this game. However, puzzling to most, the question is how? Since I needed Victini and Genesect, how would I obtain them if the events for them no longer existed? Wouldn't this mean that I wouldn't need to obtain them in order to complete this challenge based on the rules I explained earlier? Well, you would be correct if it wasn't for the fact that you can still obtain them. Although not completely legitimate, you see, this was actually doable without the use of a cheating device. On older Pokemon games, there's a manipulation you can do with tweaking settings in your DNS on the actual DS that you're playing on, which would essentially allow your console to spoof the servers and allow you to connect to Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, which then allows you to obtain old mystery gift events. Technically, since anybody can do this, I figured I would count them for the sake of the fact that literally anybody can do this. Now, after speedrunning my way through Pokemon Black and White, I finally got to Castelia City. Now, time was of the essence at this point, and I could not afford to waste any time doing things that weren't completely necessary. I had obtained the Liberty Pass as well from Mystery Gift, so now it was time to set sail to Liberty Island and catch the mythical Pokemon known as Victini. I had originally remembered this event taking a lot longer than it did, but boy, was it nostalgic to play through this again for the first time in over a decade. It was just nice to relive a bit of nostalgia, honestly. Obtaining Victini after a bit of a struggle, this brought the grand total of Pokemon caught up to 989. Following this, it was time to revisit another game that I had left on the back burner for a while since the first time we played through it in this challenge. Welcome back to Legends Arceus, baby. Taking a stroll back to Hisui, I still had unfinished business with some of these mythical Pokemon available in this game, and those being Darkrai, Shaman, Manaphy, and Fione. These Pokemon were thankfully made obtainable in Legends Arceus through the means of in-game events. What were previously unobtainable in any other Switch title were now made obtainable because of this game. However, in order to obtain all of them, you needed to have save data in BDSP and Sword and Shield. You would unlock 3 different quests that would allow you to go and catch all these mythical Pokemon. Admittedly, a few rather short quests, because I got extremely lucky with catching all of them. So much so that my chat was blown away by it, as I presumed I would not get this lucky. It was pretty much first ball for every Pokemon. Now at this point, I took everything to Pokemon Home. We re-added up all the Pokemon I was missing and figured out now that the true count of Pokemon I would need to obtain would be 1,071 Pokemon. With a 994 total Pokemon caught, this put us in good standing to complete everything on time, leaving only 5 hours on the clock. At this point, I was getting very worried that I wouldn't be able to do it on time. Now it's dawn of the final day. With 6 hours on the clock, I'm now tasked with what would be the most stress-inducing part of this challenge. I had a lot of Pokemon to still obtain. And now more than ever, every single minute counts. Considering a vast majority of the Pokemon I still needed were evolutions, I was going to need a large supply of XP candies in order to make sure I was able to catch and obtain every Pokemon I still needed. After spending a fair amount of time collecting XP candies, I then began mass breeding and evolving Pokemon I would need in order to continue filling up my decks. Now here comes a good chapter of the video. Shout out to my boy Stephen Gibby. He arrived to save the day for the boy. Stephen Gibby, he's a man who's infamous on my streams. In fact, somebody who I actually met through my chat a few years back. Since then, him and I become very close friends, and he's somebody who I trust with my life. He knew I needed reinforcements, and he pulled up to help me lock in and complete the rest of the challenge from this point. After a long night of catching, breeding, and evolving Pokemon, tracking them all down one by one, even Steven partially taking control of the wheel for me at a certain point. He was there to make sure we kept on pace for this challenge and help me track down the remaining Pokemon needed in order to complete this. At this point, we had been live for like 9 hours that night, and the sun was finally starting to come up. So from there, we decided to call it a night. At this point, we still needed 28 more Pokemon and only had an hour and 40 minutes left on the clock. This meant that I was really down to the wire at this point. The next stream I did, I needed to lock in the most I had ever locked in order to complete this challenge. The final 28 Pokemon. It was grind time, baby. Some of these mythicals. Okay, well, let's start off by doing one thing here real quickly so we can get this done and dusted. Right now, my counter says I have 1044 Pokemon on the tracker. So 1044 is the actual number that we should be at right now. Okay, so now I have Balfalant, Druddigon, and Heatmore. So that brings us to 1047. I know I have a Darumaka on here. I just need to evolve Patrat. Tick off Darumaka. That brings us to a grand total of 1048. So I think the amount of Pokemon that we actually need to... And then 20 for Houndstone. So we only need 20 more Pokemon in total from where we're at. So the actual amount that we need to get to is 1,069. Yet again, another example of how bad my math is. This was also incorrect, but don't worry, I fixed it after. And there was no room for mistakes at this point. I needed everything to go perfect. At this point, my chances of success were definitely dwindling, and so was my confidence. With everybody in chat as clenched as I was this whole time, we needed to focus and make sure that we absolutely locked the f*** in, fellas. That's not what I needed. I once saw one the other day, as soon as you enter gliding from a tree. Wait, really? Gliding from a tree? Oh! How do I get it? How do I get it? How do I get it, chat? Ring the bell? Yes! Yes, come here. Let me encounter you. Let's go. Sun in here quick. Yeah, it's always raining in the UK. Perfect. We're so close. Assalamu alaikum fish. There it is. Aloma. Let there be a... Oh, yes! There we go. Okay, I need that other one over there, too. Lock in, fellas. Lock in. Done. Okay. 1063. X. 1065. With only 45 minutes left on the timer, this was definitely not impossible. But this meant I had to go as fast as possible. As the timer kept going up, the tensions did too. I knew that if I did this, it was going to require a certain level of luck in order to achieve my goal. And there was genuinely no way around that. Now, firing up Scarlet and Violet, thankfully, I obtained Trevenant and Basculin within moments of each other, which thankfully sped up this process a lot. Following this, I fired up Let's Go. Knowing that I still needed an Alolan Raichu, I remembered there was an NPC in the game that would trade you one in return for a Cantonian Raichu. This was ultimately way faster than obtaining a Pikachu through SOS in Ultra Sun and Moon and then evolving it there. Luckily, RNG was on my side with this one. So we need to get a Pikachu, we need to go to Celadon to get a Thunderstone for it. And then we need to trade it to somebody in Saffron. Okay, come on. Just give me luck and give me a Pikachu as fast as humanly possible here, please. Maybe it would be a smart idea to use a lure. Come on, Pikachu. Yes! Oh my god! Do I only have 7 Premier Balls? I hope I don't only have 7 Premier Balls. Oh my god, let's go. That's so fucking huge, bro. Oh, that's so huge, bro. That is so good, chat. Okay. Off to Celadon. I found a Pikachu within just a couple of moments. I rushed over to Celadon City to obtain a Thunderstone, and then proceeded to evolve it, then headed to Saffron City's Pokemon Center to make a trade with the NPC that sat in there. After this, I went on to Ultra Sun and Moon. This was in order to obtain a Stunfisk. Oddly enough, this was just like a small chunk of other Pokemon that were only obtainable in a certain game. In Ultra Sun and Moon, you can only get Stunfisk through blue wormholes. Now, that being said, again, it was all up to RNG at this point to be able to determine the outcome of this challenge. Alright, chat. For the culture, 5k or bust, baby. 5k or bust. I'm just gonna go into the first blue wormhole I see. First blue one I see, I'm going into. Come on, Stunfisk. 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 But thankfully, I got pretty lucky. Yes! Let's go, dude. After this, there were only 2 Pokemon who remained. Watchog, which I had a patch on Pokemon Black and White from the night before, and it was very close to evolving. So I just needed to win a couple of battles and be able to evolve the Patrat into a Watchog, and then I was a-okay. Can I get a crit, please, or a flinch, maybe? Haha, yes! Give me that crit, baby. Come on, let that be enough. I think it's... Boom. Boom. All right, okay. After winning a couple battles, this leveled it up to level 20, which would then allow Patrat to evolve to a Watchog, bringing us to 1,070 Pokemon caught in this challenge. 150 hours, 39 minutes, and 50 seconds on the clock. Just a smidge over 20 minutes left on the clock. And all I needed was one more Pokemon. There was literally no way that I could fail this. So, back to Ultra Sun and Moon I went. I then went over to the Hoenn Grand Resort to obtain the last Pokemon I needed to complete this challenge. It's worth mentioning that the reason why I left this specific Pokemon for last was because this was one that meant a great deal to me. Back in the days of Pokemon Sun and Moon, I was on top of the streaming game. I was the second fastest growing Pokemon channel in that year. I had become very well known for my shiny hunting streams that I used to have thousands of viewers watching me live every single day. One fateful night, I encountered this shiny Pyukumuku. And for some reason, everyone in my community had taken a special liking to this Pokemon in specific. This spawned a wave of merch, tons of fan art, and lots of great memories that were made. Even so much so that I had this little guy custom made for me and sent to my P.O. box. And this was made by my boy Ralph, who's someone who still remains in my community to this day. And needless to say, Kevin right here holds a special spot in my heart. In all of our hearts, actually. As he was truly the catalyst for a lot of people's nostalgia and memories from my streams many years ago. But that being said, I knew I had to save Kevin for last. Luckily, I found Pyukumuku within seconds of getting to the Grand Resort. Now, this left me with a decision. Do I just end it all there? Or do I use the remaining 20 minutes to make a remarkable memory that nobody could ever forget? I decided for nostalgia's sake, I was going to throw a Hail Mary and attempt to see if I could find a shiny Pyukumuku. Now, my spirits were high and the celebration had already taken effect, because everybody in chat at this point knew I had completed the challenge. But despite the fact that there was no way I could fail at this point, I really wanted to try and make it very special for everybody. Now, simply put, I could have stopped the timer at this point, but I thought about how epic and monumental it would have been if I found a shiny one in honor of the true mascot of my streams. I pushed it down to the wire, with a glimmer of hope that maybe I had the chance to put the cherry on top of this multi-layered cake that I had been baking. Unfortunately though, after many attempts, we were unsuccessful in obtaining a shiny. But that's okay, I was at peace with everything. I knew that no matter what, I did it. I completed the challenge. I had completed the sole duty that I set out to achieve many months prior. All I cared about was the fact that I did it. As I threw my Pokeball with anticipation, it shook 3 times and clicked shut, putting us at a final time of 150 hours, 59 minutes, and 13 seconds. The challenge is complete, and that's time, baby! That is time! Right under 151 hours. GG, baby! It is done! It is done, fellas! It is done! We have caught every single obtainable Pokemon in the entire franchise in under 151 hours. Oh my god. Let them know that you were here in the video, chat. Let them know. I was here in chat. Let them know, fellas. Let them know. Thank you all so much for joining me throughout the last several months of doing this challenge. How stressful and annoying it was at times, and honestly almost hopeless at times. I remember every time I'd clock over to a new 100 Pokemon caught, I would be like, God, I don't know if we're gonna do it. We did it, and we did it together. Big shout out to every single one of you who were a part of this journey along the way. You were here in these streams every single night. You were here for watching from the sidelines, typing in the chat, whatever it is. And I'm so thankful too, because during the process of doing these streams, we had so many new people join the community, and hopefully for good. And it makes me very hopeful that this video will do very well. If you are watching this as a video after the fact, subscribe for more, because this won't be the last time I do some crazy like this. Spanning over the course of almost 4 months, I had finally obtained every single Pokemon known to man, minus the handful that I said I couldn't complete, but don't let that ruin the moment though. And not only did I do that in my own pace, but I did that at world record pace. To this day, I have not seen a single person complete the Living Dex in the time that I did. So maybe now we actually achieved a new speedrun world record category. I hope I inspired people by doing this challenge to try it themselves. Truly, without a doubt, I'm not sure if I could say that this would have been possible without the help of all of the people in my amazing community that were there to cheer me on and root for me as I did this insane challenge that I've never seen a single other person do before. And to each and every one of you who watched this video, thank you for making this such a special occurrence and such a special one-off video that I really hope that you've enjoyed watching. I think it goes without saying that if you've watched this point in the video, you need to comment Kevin is the GOAT. I want to see how many people comment that down below. As well, don't forget, we got a Discord server. You could go there to be able to get updates about when I post new videos or go live, and it works a lot better than YouTube's notification system does. So check out the link in the description. Join the Discord. We got a great community over there. I promise you won't regret joining it. And that said, if you enjoyed challenges like this, make sure to subscribe. We dropped below 100K even after I got the plaque. I would love to be able to go over that again and try to really grow this channel back up to a point where it might be possible to go full-time with content creation again. Maybe the next thing we do after this is crazy. Hey, listen, if this video hits 10,000 likes, which is very unlikely, but if it does, I might regret saying this, but if it does, I'll do a shiny Living Dex challenge next. And God only knows how many gray hairs I will gain from doing that challenge, but let's not even think about it. All that matters is that you enjoyed today's video and that I hope to see all of you back again for another video here very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much, dude. Seriously, this has been an unbelievable feat. Probably one of my peak gaming accomplishments. I don't think it's gonna be hard to top this one. It's gonna be hard to top this one, chat. I'm not gonna lie to you.